One winter's night 12 years ago, I was standing on a street corner in Woolloomooloo, and I noticed a man sitting in the gutter reading a book under a street lamp. He was so engaged in this book that he didn't realise that cars were having to drive around him. This scene intrigued me, and I went over and spoke to him. We had a small conversation about reading, and he told me that he read 4 or 5 books a week that he found on park benches, in bus shelters and in rubbish bins. And he told me that he read all night and slept all day for his own safety. So after that, I started to bring Joe a couple of books each week. And that turned into 50 books once word got out amongst the homeless community. That was how the Footpath Library started. 8 years ago, the Footpath Library was registered as a not-for-profit organisation with the aim of making books accessible to homeless people, raising awareness, encouraging literacy and raising awareness around homelessness. So how many people do you think are homeless on any one night in Australia? It might surprise you to know that figure is 1 in 200. And it might also surprise you to know that many homeless people are highly literate and love to read. And of course there are homeless people who struggle with literacy, and this is a real challenge for them and for our society. Let me tell you about Steve. I first met Steve the day he came out of jail, where he'd been incarcerated for 7 years. He turned up at the mobile service, this tall man with very long hair and a very long beard and a great big smile on his face. And he told me that he wasn't there for the books because he'd never read a book in his life, which I found staggering considering he'd had 7 years to read a book. And whilst it seemed he was there just for the social interaction, I encouraged him just to have a look and see if anything took his eye. So he walked around and around the books that were on the footpath, and finally he picked up a book that made him laugh. And it was by Paul Carter, and the title was "Don't Tell Mum I Work on the Oil Rigs. She thinks I'm a piano player in a whorehouse." So after that, Steve took a book every week. So why does the Footpath Library now have 120 libraries in homeless hostels, community organisations and refuges across 4 states? Well, Steve was the one who told me that there were no books available in homeless hostels in Sydney and that we should do something about it. So I emailed all my friends and asked them to donate to the purchase of 5 bookcases that we installed in Edward Eager Lodge in Surrey Hills. We filled the bookcases with books, and when the books disappeared, we filled them up with more books. And this was a man, so Steve was actually responsible for the Footpath Library installing its first homeless hostel library. And this was a man who had spent 7 years behind bars and until a few months before had never read a book. And he was now inspired to help other people like himself have access to good quality reading material. The Footpath Library now gives away 3,000 books a month in Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne and Perth. And we have 2 mobile services in Sydney where homeless people can come along, get some books, have a cup of tea or coffee and have a conversation with our volunteers. So how can the Footpath Library help homeless people develop their literacy skills? Well, we are super excited to be implementing Literacy for Living, a unique outreach program for homeless people. And tonight, you can help us make this possible. What have we done so far? Well, firstly, we've contacted a number of hostels to gauge their interest in running this program for their clients. And we've had a number of them come back to us, and we now have a small group that we are going to conduct a trial program for here in Sydney. Secondly, we have engaged a literacy specialist to find out what the specific needs of the clients in these hostels are. So it might be anything from filling in forms, reading the newspaper, helping a child do their homework, or even just writing letters. What's the next step? Our literacy expert will offer one-on-one literacy coaching during weekly visits to clients. And if successful, we will train volunteer tutors and we will be able to expand the program across Sydney. Most of us love to read, and we reap the health benefits that reading brings. The medical profession recognises books as therapy, and there is a term for this. It's bibliotherapy. And tonight, you all have the opportunity to be bibliotherapists. The Footpath Library invites you to contribute $10,000 so that we can launch Literacy for Living. We would love you to help us increase literacy levels amongst homeless men, women and children. And in doing so, share the joy of reading and help these people stay healthy. Thank you.